David, nous avons entendu donc, vous nous avez évoqué des questions relatives au temps de guerre. Mais il y a aussi des initiatives et des traités et des conventions maintenant des Nations Unies sur le partage des eaux transfrontières, etc. Alors la question, you now.
Okay, I don't want to have conflicts. Okay. Merci beaucoup.
Contradiction, you said, between national sovereignty and international law. Please.
Merci beaucoup de l'invitation à être avec vous aujourd'hui. Pardonnez-moi que je dois donner la présentation en anglais, qui ma langue française n'est pas suffisante. It's over a century since the first Turkish plan for managing the Jordan. It's over 65 years since the competing sovereignties developed alternative plans for managing the Jordan. It's over 40 years since there have been changes that have restricted the availability of water to meet human needs since the 73 war. It's time to resolve the disputes in the Jordan River by water allocation, by acknowledging the rights of all parties, Lebanese, Syrians, Jordanians, Palestinians, and Israeli citizens, to the Jordan River, the riparians, by creation and provision of supplemental water sources to meet all human needs. Despite the regional violence and migration, it's actually an ideal time to propose a regional Jordan River Development Bank that would invest in the infrastructure needs of all the riparians through public-private partnerships. And when I finish, you'll see it's a reasonable solution that meets political needs of the parties and enhances the lives of the citizens in the basin. It's beyond the scope in this brief talk to describe the organization and management of this proposed bank. I'm happy to answer questions, and I have more details in the associated paper. But it would operate as a multinational institution. The best comparison would be the North American Development Bank, using seed capital as a basis for borrowing from world capital markets. Third parties would provide most of the endowment capital. Staff would be drawn from each riparian. Leadership would rotate among the riparians. And no nation would need to recognize the legitimacy of any national or local government. That's a key point. No nation needs to accept the legitimacy of any other government, because that's always been a barrier to progress in the past. Nations, what are some factors why this concept could work today? Nations of the world want to support the Lebanese, Jordanians, and Syrian people in this period of violence and instability through provision of water and wastewater infrastructure, and contribute to improving the prospects for peace between the Palestinians and Israelis. The waters of the basin are already over-allocated, and existing water uses are unlikely to be changed except through voluntary decisions by national governments. That's actually an asset, because desalination, water conservation, wastewater reuse, and transboundary water cooperation offer opportunities for new water supplies to meet all water needs of each riparian and transform people's lives. Let's make water, not war. Such a bank could harness professional skills of riparian nationals to work with world capital markets and public and private utilities in each of the riparians and third parties to create and distribute water for all water needs in the basin, as well as prevent water pollution and enhance reuse. What are the principles of such an agreement among the parties? The nations signing such an agreement, the signatories, would recognize the legitimate rights of all people living within the basin, because it's a transboundary river, to its water for all appropriate uses, including domestic supply, irrigation, commercial and industrial uses, hydropower, recreation, transportation, ecological support within streams, wetlands, and lakes for biota, and water quality management. The signatories recognize the Jordan is already overallocated. Historic uses are unlikely to be changed except through voluntary actions by the national governments, and that's outside the scope of an agreement. The signatories agree to work together to create new water supply and wastewater infrastructure to provide water to fulfill all water needs of all the people living in the basin. The endowments that will be provided primarily from third parties will be the capital basis for raising loan funds from international markets as a self-sustaining revolving capital fund. Water users will pay fees for debt service, operation, management, and maintenance costs to assure reliable and cost-effective services managed by water sector utilities, hereafter we'll call them utilities, organized either as for-profit or nonprofit organizations to manage each investment. The bank will require transnational, national, or local management utilities to assure that each project will deliver water or prevent pollution through transparent, cost-effective, reliable, and sustainable procedures. The bank can use its income from endowment to support training, public communication and outreach, and engineering design services to assure community support and sustainable utility operation. The bank will use third-party funds to subsidize transnational water infrastructure projects. So there's an incentive to go to transnational projects that benefit multiple nations, such as the Red Sea, Dead Sea project. What are the steps that would be useful? There are really two. First, one of the barriers to an agreement is the establishment of the water rights of each party. It's time to deal with that. Second, we need to look at alternative options for enhancing the water needs, for addressing the water needs of all the people in the basin. So what are the legitimate rights to water from the Jordan River for each of the signatories? Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, and Israel. The tactic here is each party shall self-define its own water rights, okay? So this is similar to the concept under the Paris Agreement for climate change. The extent of the Jordan River's drainage, what are some of the elements that can be used? The extent of the Jordan River's drainage areas in territories of each signatory. The contribution of water to the Jordan from the territory of each signatory, both as rainfall and as flow. The current utilization of the Jordan's waters by each signatory. The economic and social needs of each for water by each signatory. The population dependent on the Jordan's waters for each signatory. The comparative costs of alternative means of satisfying the economic and social needs of each signatory. The availability of other water resources, and efforts to avoid unnecessary waste in the use of water and pollution prevention. It's important to identify potential projects. What are those potential projects, including costs, beneficiaries, transboundary, and environmental impacts for potential utility management to meet human needs? How can water user participation, pre-design, engineering feasibility, and financial sustainability through user fees be assured? And what forms of international and national oversight are acceptable to each signatory to assure cost-effective, corruption-free, transparent, timely, and sustainable project implementation to justify international capital participation? So what are the key elements of this proposal? This resolves disputes of over a century regarding water allocation among the Jordan riparians by seeking to satisfy all water needs of each riparian. It does not require any political recognition. Each party self-defines its legitimate Jordan River Basin water rights and water needs. All parties seek to satisfy all water needs of people within the basin. It is consistent with existing international norms and rules of water uses for international river basins, all bilateral treaties and multilateral agreements among the riparians as they exist now, and the need of each riparian to self-define its Jordan River water rights. It operates through accepted international procedures of multinational infrastructure banks and contributes to social stability, economic development, local autonomy, wealth creation, and cooperation among the people of the Jordan Basin. Thank you.
Fantastic.